Welcome to Rose Center. My name is Robert Spurko and I curated this exhibit here. That means that I actually selected the pieces and put the exhibit together and hung it on the walls and so on. And it's our Faith, Family and Friends exhibit, and it's sponsored by the From Africa to Appalachia Foundation for the Arts, which is a foundation founded by Sammie Nicely and Jovita Wells back in the 1980s. Let me tell you a little bit about Sammie himself. He's from Morristown, actually from Russellville, Tennessee, and he had several brothers and sisters, several of them still alive today in the area. Sammie has recently been living in Atlanta, Georgia, at least for the last 20 years or so, and he got his degree. He has a degree from Middle Tennessee State in fine art, and he has taught art in the Morristown, Hamlin County school system. He teaches art in various other school systems. He's taught in Georgia, several locations, in other parts of Tennessee, up in the Johnson City area. He has quite a resume as far as shows that he's done, quality work that he's done, and also in the educational field. He loved to work with children, and children loved to work with him. He most recently devoted his time to studying and producing artwork directly related to his African American heritage, and he was very proud of that fact. It will be readily apparent that he had did quite a bit of study of the African American heritage, and he combined that with his Appalachian heritage, and he was also very proud of that. And most people don't realize the connection between the African and the Appalachian people, but there was a very close connection for quite a long time, and still is today. Let's talk a little bit about the show itself. This show here is called a retrospective, which means that we tried to find works that go back to Sammie's very beginning of his art career and progressed through a year and a half ago, shortly before he passed away. And for example, this piece here, which is a carving that he did back in the 1970s, was one of his first early works of some significance. This was in an exhibit that he had at the Fisk University here in Tennessee, and this piece was actually on the cover of the catalog for that show. And of course, he was best known for his ceramic work. He was a ceramicist. In other words, he was a potter. He worked with clay. He loved to work with clay because he could work with his hands in the clay. And you can see several other pieces here that are ceramic pieces. These are newer works. This one is especially. The bowl here and the pieces up here are also fairly early works. These are probably from the late 70s, early 1980s. This piece here is much newer. This is probably from the mid-2000s. This piece here, a lot of his things are not dated, so we just go by the style of the piece that was produced at the time. The piece here is an early drawing of his. This is very much influenced by what was going on at the time when he got his degree from Middle Tennessee State. This is from the early 1980s. He did several pieces. There's several pieces in the show that are pencil drawings. This is what's called a graphite or pencil drawing on paper. If you know anything about pottery, you have to fire it in a kiln, which is a large oven, which gets very hot, and that makes the clay hard. And this has no glaze on it like you would have on a coffee cup or a dinner plate. This is unglazed, and the color is derived by putting this into after it's been fired in the kiln, putting it in an open pit, and then burning it in the open pit with various things like straw or newspaper or so on, and it gets this smoky look to it, and that's called pit firing. One of his clay tiles, this is made exactly like a tile you might have in your bathroom at home. It's a ceramic tile. Of course, it's a little bit larger, and then he using glazes here, which gives it the shiny surface, like a tile you might have in your bathroom. He paints the different colors of the glazes on there and then fires that again to get the pictures that he gets out of the tiles when he fires. Another technique that Sammie loved was to work with colored pencil and colored pastels. This is part of a series he called his Angel series, and they're sort of abstracted series, but these in his mind were angels, and he did a lot of these angel series. This piece here was a collaborative work that Sammie did. Again, it's a drawing, mostly pencil and pastel, but it was done by not only Sammie, but a good friend of his, Richard Flam. And this was done actually for fundraising. And during the fundraiser, they did this work, and at the end of the fundraiser, they auctioned it off to raise money for the organization that was sponsoring it. So he loved to work with other people and actually produce things in conjunction with other folks. Here's a fairly early piece of Sammie's. It's called a face jug, and a lot of people find these interesting, if nothing else. But he liked to do different types of things, and he would work on things for a while. This is not too dissimilar to a lot of his masks, which, if we can turn this way, you see a grouping of his masks here. Some pit fired, for example, and some glazed, for example. And these were his mask series, which he did off and on through his artistic career. For example, the fish pieces here, again, combinations. This was actually pit fired. This one here, these were glazed, ceramic glazes on them. But he did series, like he would do a fish series, and he would do these for several years, and then that was it. He didn't do any more. He also did roosters, which he did for several years. He did turtles for several years. But then when he quit, he quit. He didn't do any more, which was very interesting. Very few people know that he did lamp bases, because he only did about a dozen of these, and that was all. And he quit doing them. As you can see, here's another one of his more contemporary drawings. This is mixed media. It's got pastel, it's got some paint in it, it's got colored pencils, it's a whole variety of things. This type of mask, which he actually called a passport mask, in various areas of Africa, when people would travel around, they would make masks related to their tribe in Africa. And they use those masks for identity, so people would know where they came from in different areas in Africa, and they called them passport masks. And they were about this size. And this is Sammie's idea or version of it. I'd like to mention about this show is that these are pieces that we have gathered from other people's collections. In other words, these are all owned by someone else who has lent them to us to do this particular show. And so it represents the collections of several other people, among who myself, I own several of these pieces here in the show. None of these works are for sale. They're already owned by someone else, and we appreciate the opportunity to present these things.